Round the World Lit Audio. Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Episode 1. The Island, the Conch, and the First Fire. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest stories ever told, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week. Free to listen. Series introduction. Today we begin a new book, Lord of the Flies, by William Golding, published in the United Kingdom in 1954. One of the most widely read novels in the English language, assigned in schools across the world, translated into dozens of languages, adapted for film and now for television, a book that has been in continuous print for 70 years, and has never stopped being relevant. William Golding was born in 1911 in Cornwall, England. He served in the Royal Navy during the Second World War, was present at the D-Day landings, had commanded a rocket-launching craft, had seen what men do to each other when the structures that contain them are removed. He came back from the war with a specific and hard-won understanding of human nature that was different from the optimistic understanding that the English literary tradition had generally preferred. He wrote Lord of the Flies as a direct response to a book called The Coral Island, a Victorian adventure novel by R.M. Ballantyne in which a group of English boys are shipwrecked on a tropical island and proceed to behave in an exemplary fashion, maintaining their Christian values and their English decency, in the absence of adult supervision. Golding had read this novel as a child. He had also fought in a world war. He found the two experiences incompatible. He wrote Lord of the Flies to say, this is what actually happens. Not to boys specifically, to people, to human beings when the thin layer of civilization that normally contains them is removed, when the rules are gone and the adults are gone and the structure is gone, and what remains is the question of what we actually are underneath all of it. The answer Golding gives is not flattering, but it is honest. And the novel's honesty, its refusal to pretend that civilization is natural, or that goodness is the default human condition, is precisely what has made it impossible to stop reading for 70 years. William Golding was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1983. The Nobel Committee said he illuminated the human condition in the world of today. Episode 1. The Island, the Conch, and the First Fire. Chapter 1. The Sound of the Shell. The boy with fair hair came down to the beach first. He was perhaps 12 years old, fair-haired, well-built, with the easy physical confidence of a boy who has always been comfortable in his body. His name was Ralph. He had been on an evacuee plane from England, the war that exists offstage throughout the novel, never seen, but always present. The adult world's violence providing the backdrop against which the boy's violence will develop, and the plane had been shot down, and Ralph had survived and climbed down through the jungle to the beach. He was alone. He explored the beach with the specific pleasure of a boy who has just discovered that there are no adults, the pleasure that is the novel's first gift to its characters, and the reader's first signal that something is wrong with finding it so pleasurable. He took off his school uniform and went swimming. The lagoon was warm and clear. The island was beautiful. Then he heard something in the jungle behind him. A fat boy emerged from the vegetation, round, breathless, with thick spectacles and the quality of someone who has always been the last one chosen, and has made his peace with it. Mostly. He had asthma. He had been teased all his life. His name was not given for several pages, because Ralph asked his name, and the boy said his name but added, "The kids used to call me Piggy." Ralph laughed. This is the novel's first cruelty, small, thoughtless, the cruelty of a boy who is not malicious but who finds the name funny and cannot see past the finding to the person it belongs to. He would call Piggy by his nickname for the rest of the novel, despite promising not to tell anyone. He told everyone almost immediately. Piggy was the most intelligent person on the island. This is one of the novel's consistent structural ironies, the one who sees most clearly, who understands what is happening, who keeps trying to apply reason to unreasonable situations, is the one who is most vulnerable, most dismissed, most unable to make anyone listen. Piggy's glasses start the fire that signals for rescue. Piggy's intelligence provides the analysis that nobody follows. Piggy's death is the clearest statement the novel makes about what happens to reason when fear and power fill the space that civilization has vacated. But Piggy was also annoying in the way of someone who is right too often, and knows it and cannot entirely conceal the knowing. They found the conch. The conch was a large, pale pink shell in the lagoon. Piggy recognized it, told Ralph what it was, told him it could be blown like a horn. Ralph blew it. The sound carried across the island with the specific quality of a sound that means something, a sound that implies structure, and authority and the possibility of being found. Boys came. They came from the jungle and the beach and the trees, boys of various ages. The survivors of the crash, appearing in ones and twos and small groups, drawn by the sound of the conch. Some were young, 6 or 7 years old, the little ones who would be called the litluns, and who would recede into the background of the novel as the violence escalated, present and afraid but without the agency to affect events. Some were older. The last to arrive was a group marching in formation. They were a choir, boys in black cloaks with silver crosses on their collars, marching in two parallel lines with the automatic discipline of people who have been marching in lines for long enough that they do so without thinking. Their leader walked at the front. His name was Jack Merridew. He was thin and red-haired, and had the face of someone whose will was the most important thing in any room he entered. He had been head boy of the choir. He was accustomed to giving orders, and having them followed, and found the absence of anyone to give orders to temporarily confusing rather than permanently disorienting. He looked at Ralph. He said, "Who's in charge here?" Ralph had been elected, not by Jack, who had proposed himself, but by the others, drawn by something in Ralph's bearing and by the conch, which he held. Jack was furious with the specific fury of someone who had expected to be chosen and had not been, but he controlled it for now. Ralph gave Jack the hunters. He said, "The choir can be hunters. Jack's hunters. Jack could be in charge of them." Jack accepted this. The hunting and the fire and the rules were established. The conch would be used for meetings. Whoever held the conch had the right to speak and the others had to listen. This was the first and most important rule, the rule on which the novel's entire political drama would turn, the rule that would be broken at the precise moment that civilization on the island ended. Chapters 2 and 3, Fire and Hunters. The first assembly was held on the beach. Ralph stood with the conch and talked about the situation with the specific competence of a boy who is trying to be adult without having the experience that adulthood provides. He said, "We're on an island. Nobody knows we're here. We need to be rescued. The only way to be rescued is to make a fire, a signal fire on the top of the mountain, visible to passing ships or planes." This was correct. This was the right analysis. This was the plan that, had it been consistently followed, would have gotten them all home. They went up the mountain. They made a fire, or rather they made the attempt at a fire, which became something other than what they intended with remarkable speed. The boys gathered wood. Piggy's glasses were used to focus the sunlight. The fire caught. Then the fire got away from them. It spread into the trees with the specific momentum of a fire that has been started without proper preparation and has found fuel, and has no intention of stopping at the boundaries the boys imagined for it. The smoke was enormous. The wood crackled and the flames rose, and the boys watched with the mixture of pride and alarm of people who have done something larger than they planned. In the chaos a small boy went missing. A littlun, one of the smallest, who had had a mulberry-colored birthmark on his face, and had been pointed at during the assembly as evidence for the beast, the creature he claimed to have seen in the jungle. He was never seen again. The fire that was supposed to save them had killed the first of them. Nobody said this directly. The novel says it in the specific way of Golding, stating the fact and moving on, leaving the weight of it for the reader to carry. Meanwhile Jack hunted. Jack had taken his choir into the jungle, and was learning to be a hunter. He was learning it with the specific intensity of someone who has found the thing they are best at and is discovering what it costs, not the physical cost but the psychological cost, the thing you have to do to yourself to be able to look an animal in the eyes and then kill it. He had failed to kill his first pig. He had raised the knife and hesitated, and the pig had escaped, and he had stood in the jungle with the knife in his hand, and the specific shame of someone who has failed at the thing that matters most to them. He said, "Next time." He meant it absolutely. Simon was in the jungle too. Simon was different from the others, quieter, more interior, with the quality of someone who perceives things that the others do not, and cannot entirely explain what he perceives. He helped the litluns reach fruit in the high branches. He found a clearing in the jungle, a beautiful, secret, entirely private place where the light came through the canopy in a particular way and where he would go when the weight of everything became too heavy. He was not magical and not religious in any formal sense. He was simply more fully human than the others, in the specific way that is always inconvenient to people who are busy, becoming less fully human. Chapter 4, Painted Faces and Long Hair. The island had its rhythms. Morning and evening were bearable, the heat was manageable, and the work of survival could be done. Midday was difficult. The heat pressed down and the mirage made the sea shimmer, and the boys lay in the shade, and the litluns had their terrors, the small private nightmares of children far from home, who have been told to be brave, and are not entirely sure what brave means. The hunters painted their faces. Jack discovered that the pigs could smell him, and see him, that the pig, wary and alert, could detect a human hunter before the human could get close enough to strike. He tried clay and charcoal, smearing his face in patterns, and found that the mask did something beyond camouflage. It freed him. This is the most important moment in Chapter 4, the discovery that a mask frees the person wearing it from the identity that the unmasked face carries. Jack with his painted face was not Jack Merridew, head boy of the choir, who had rules about what was acceptable. Jack with his painted face was something older and less constrained, something that did not need to hesitate before raising the knife. He killed his first pig. The hunters drove a pig and Jack killed it, and the hunters stood around the carcass with the specific excitement of people who have done something primal, and have found it electrifying. They reenacted the hunt, one of them playing the pig, the others striking at him with their spears, circling, chanting, "Kill the pig, cut her throat, spill her blood." While this was happening, a ship passed. Ralph saw it from the beach. A ship, a real ship, away home, moving along the horizon. He looked up at the mountain. The signal fire had gone out. Jack and the hunters had been supposed to maintain the fire. They had left it to hunt. The ship passed without seeing them. Ralph confronted Jack with the specific fury of someone whose survival plan has just been sabotaged by someone else's priorities. Jack had the pig. He had the hunters. He had the chant. He looked at Ralph's fury and did not fully understand it, could not, at this moment, prioritize the ship over the pig, the rescue over the hunt. Piggy said, "There was a ship." Jack hit him. He hit him with his open hand, and Piggy's glasses flew off and one lens broke, and Piggy stood on the beach half blind and furious and humiliated and said, "That's the only pair of specs on this island, and now one eye's gone. How are we going to make fire?" Jack said nothing. He looked at what he had done and did not apologize. Ralph called an assembly. He held the conch. Episode transition. You have reached the end of episode 1 of Lord of the Flies, by William Golding. The island has been established. Ralph and the conch and the rules and the signal fire. Civilization's best attempt. Jack and the hunters and the painted faces and the chant. The other thing, the older thing, waking. A ship has passed. The glasses are broken. A littlun is already dead. In episode 2, the beast arrives, first as rumor, then as fear, then as something that the boys themselves create, and Simon goes into the jungle and the Lord of the Flies speaks. Episode 2 is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new episode arrives every week.